Hi everyone, thanks for the introduction. My name is David Rose. I live with a really ultra rare condition called occipital horn syndrome. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the condition itself, what I do at Great Ormond Street Hospital, and kind of my experiences growing up. I appreciate it's kind of near the end of the day and everyone's kind of looking to get home and check what time the trains are, so bear with me and hope it's of interest for you. So I spent, as I said, a huge amount of childhood and teenage years at Great Ormond Street Hospital. I had my first surgery at 6 weeks old at Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge, which is where I grew up. Very quickly moved to Great Ormond Street after about 6 months maybe. So from 6 months up until 19, I was at that place, and obviously it's of great importance to me. It had a huge impact on myself, my education, making friends, my sister, mum and dad, childcare. It kind of, everyone in this room understands when you have a rare disease, it's not just living with the medical side of it, it's all the extra stuff that comes with it. From the earlier talks, it's very interesting. So originally I was diagnosed with something called Ehlers-Danlos when I was 3 years old. It was very unusual back then. You've only heard today, Esme, I think her name was, that just spoke about it then. Lara, who I've known for a long time, talking about Ehlers-Danlos. It obviously existed, but people didn't have any idea what it was at that point. So I'm 34, so it would have been 1991 that I was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos, and every kind of clinician that I saw, bearing in mind, Great Ormond Street is a leader in rare disease, and it's very used to people having these unusual conditions. It was like, oh, you'll probably never meet anyone with EDS in your life. I've probably met at least 2,000 people through my work and advocacy work. So it's really interesting kind of to see how it's evolved, and it's refreshing. I think seeing what's happening in Ehlers-Danlos now is amazing because obviously I got a different diagnosis, which I'll come to, but when I was younger, it was quite a gloomy outlook on a lot of things, and everything. I think Esme was saying as well, where kind of you're kind of getting told, oh, you won't be able to do this, or you won't be able to finish your education, or you won't get this job, or whatever it is, and kind of a lot of negativity. So it's quite hard to take in as a young person that was always very happy-go-lucky and kind of very stubborn, very probably annoying to my sister, and always wanted to do everything that she was doing. She was a couple of years older than me. I never really let it stop me, but it was quite hard, from clinicians saying that, you're going to have quite a difficult life, occupational therapists, physios, all the kind of ancillary things that comes with living with a connective tissue disorder. So, yeah, it's been very difficult, but yeah, it's been really interesting to kind of see where EDS is going to now. I was in hospital for huge amounts of time. I was there for months on end at certain points, very regularly going there, kind of unplanned. I grew up in Caterham, just on the edge of Cambridge, so geographically it's very close to London, but it's still a little bit of a trek. So, it was very normal to go to Addenbrooke's, which is my kind of nearest hospital, for anything kind of emergency based, and then go to Great Ormond Street. But Great Ormond Street really is, obviously it's a leader in rare disease, but it's also, it sounds quite morbid, but it's often like a last hope for a lot of people. So lots of people go for, even Addenbrooke's, which is a rare disease hospital, didn't have any idea what to do with me, and that's why I went to Great Ormond Street. So for me, I feel, I'll come to this more, but I feel like I was quite lucky that, geographically I was living in Cambridge as a kid. If I was living in rural Wales, would I have had the same experience? Probably not. So although things have been difficult, I'm still lucky where I lived. This one is something that I've reflected on probably as I've got older. So my sister's only a couple of years older than me. She's perfectly healthy, lived a very normal life in inverted commas. But obviously, me being ill and me having, I think I had between 80 to 90 operations just at Great Ormond Street. So, that's just the operations alone, let alone any clinic time, let alone any A&E visits or anything else, all the kind of services that I was seen by. It had an impact on her, and I feel like now I've kind of reflected on it as an adult. I don't have children of my own, and I don't want children of my own, but now I've kind of watched her grow up and watched my nephew grow up. It feels like I've taken a lot of time away from her. I know it sounds silly, and everyone will say, "Oh, you haven't," but the physical reality is I have taken time away from her, and it's always been give and take, and my sister's always had lots of nice hobbies, and she used to be one of the best in the UK at Irish dancing, which is very random, but so I was always getting dragged around to Birmingham and Newcastle, Liverpool, kind of every weekend. So it was a bit of give and take, but I do feel like I took a huge amount of space in our family. And I think speaking to other people living with a rare disease, kind of same age as me or a bit younger or older, like they've all said the same sort of thing. I think everyone will always try and comfort you and say, oh, it doesn't, that's not how it is. And my sister and I have a very open and blunt relationship. And she said actually, like recently, we had quite an open chat, and it was actually probably one of the best things we've done, because I think it broke a lot of the like unsaid things. Like, we get on really well, and I think that she's always been, she's a fantastic sister, and I think that she didn't ever, at any point ever snap at me, ever, make out like I was a burden on the family or anything like that. And she's always been like a good sister and always kind of stuck up for me. And we still used to have a very normal relationship, and we used to play fight, and we used to do all the things that every other like annoying younger brother did. But she didn't treat me any differently. So I feel like that was something that has stuck with me, because I think if she would have treated me like treated me so differently that I couldn't be a part of the family and do normal things as a child, I think it's actually made me a better person, because I feel like I've become quite hardened to things, and I've not let it really get in the way too much. As I already said, I've had 80 plus surgeries, I think, at Great Ormond Street just on itself. I've always had a mantra of, well, I shouldn't really be here anyway. I've cheated death quite a few times. I've had lots of surgeries and things where it's 50-50. I've been in intensive care, probably 100 times. I've had sepsis 6 times. I've had everything. So all these different things that probably should have finished me off, it didn't. And I think that's why I try and live the life the way I do. The new rare disease diagnosis I have has got a life expectancy of 40 something. So obviously I'm 34. But I don't really think of it like that, because I don't know, everyone in this room will have an understanding of life expectancy. It's something we don't really talk about probably enough, or not openly enough anyway. And something like breast cancer, you can give a stat because you can extrapolate all the data and you can work it out, and you can be like, oh, you know what your chance is. If there's 6 people in the world with what I have, how can you give a life expectancy? So I kind of ignored it and I just laughed about it. But I think that's how you have to be, because otherwise it will just take over everything. When I was at Great Ormond Street, I've always been extremely thankful for everyone. And I think one of the things that set Great Ormond Street apart from, maybe the other people that I've met that have gone to other paediatric hospitals is like every member of staff completely gets it. It doesn't matter if you're a doctor, nurse, the cleaner, everyone has such a nice attitude. And, I was kind of oblivious to a lot of things. And, but obviously my mum and dad and my sister, it was a huge, it is a burden on them. I don't care if you say it's not a burden. It was a burden on them, but the way that they were treated probably made life so much more easier for them. It could have been a lot. It's hard enough as it is raising 2 children, and obviously one of them having quite complex medical needs. But they never once complained. Like, the doctors are brilliant. I've always tried not to put in complaints or anything like that, but we put in no complaints whatsoever. There's literally nothing went wrong in 19 years of being there. Going to adult services, which is something I can talk about, was a different story. So I think it makes you realise how thankful you are at Great Ormond Street. And I've met quite a few people that went there as in the rare disease space that had a similar kind of experience to me. And you are in like a little bit of a bubble there. I don't know if anyone here is from Gosh, but it is like a really nice support bubble, just both for me being there, but for my mum and dad. And it just felt everything was so well connected, and it wasn't chasing things. Everything was done for you. It was such a nice experience. So yeah, there's I think education. I've obviously had an interesting education. It's been very different at kind of later on in life, my GCSEs and SATs and things. They was told, oh, you'll fail everything. It didn't really matter. Said you never go to A levels and like that, and did really well actually at secondary school. So I kind of proved everyone wrong, which is something I'm really proud of. People don't know actually about there's a school at Great Ormond Street which has been one of the best things I think they've ever done. It's actually it's technically a private school within the hospital. So that was a different experience. I was still going to my mainstream school, but obviously when I was missing huge amounts of time off, I was still studying. it was a funny thing because we had a classroom of kind of mixed ages. It wasn't just 9-year-olds; it was a real mix. But yeah, it was also having hospital lessons in your bed, so you couldn't really escape it, which is also annoying as well. But it was a great experience. I've always been very lucky. I think that to have a nice friendship group, from a young age, and obviously it kind of evolves and you get older and you make different friends. But I just wanted to be normal and just wanted to fit in. I didn't really tell my sort of primary school and secondary school friends absolutely every detail. As it went on, from sixth form and university, where I've made my kind of lifelong friends, I told them so much more, and the friends I've got now are, it's obviously the circle's less, but I've been very lucky to have such supportive friends. So I've mentioned the school. I think that was one of the most integral things probably for me actually being here today in terms of how it's led to work. I think the school is testament to that. Through the charity, there's also family accommodation. So I grew up in Cambridge, not a million miles away from London, but they actually have the charity funds family accommodation just around the corner in Holborn. So Gosh is at Russell Square, so literally around the corner. Just my parents used it when I was having one of my biggest surgeries when I was about 9. They were there for a long time, and it just made life so much easier rather than going back and forth. My dad's always worked for himself, so he was running a business literally from the hospital floor and the accommodation as well. So you're just very lucky. Great Ormond Street again, amazing. Like it's all sorts of things were going on. So many donations from Disney because obviously there's lots of links with that. Always Xbox games, PlayStation, board, like literally anything you can think of. It was amazing. Like it was such a distraction, and I think it never felt overly clinical, even though you was kind of surrounded by people going through really difficult surgeries and procedures. It felt like you were having a lot of fun when you weren't there. So it was really a great opportunity. Celebrities came. I've met Princess Diana, David Beckham, Gordon Ramsay. I literally so many footballers. It's been one of the better things of being ill is there are a few perks to it. Lots of different animals came in. Like we had lots of different service pets as therapy dogs and snakes and things. It's all random stuff. I think probably don't get the approval for now, but it was really good fun. The transition, I think, has been the hardest. I think everyone will probably say the same, especially going from Gosh, where you're in a really nice protective bubble. It's been a lot harder in adult care. I know I'm running short for time, but obviously I wanted to give back. I didn't really have the money to give back to Great Ormond Street, but I started volunteering for them. I had something I didn't really acknowledge for a long time, but I had a mental health breakdown in my early 20s. After graduating, I studied economics, wanted to work in finance, did it for a little bit and couldn't keep up with it. The hours were too demanding, so I left that completely in bits, didn't really know what to do, kind of put all of my energy that I ever had in my life into education. Then it didn't work, so it was quite very demoralising. My mum and dad pushed me into volunteering for Great Ormond Street, and it's the best thing I've ever done. When I was originally there, I was starting doing the Young People's Forum. I think that was from 18 to 26. Obviously, when I became too old, I couldn't do it. But it was a great community full of other ex-patients with other rare diseases and other kind of complex health needs. I don't really have a community because, as I said, there's only 6 people with what I have. There's no patient group or anything. So being part of that was a fantastic opportunity to make some other friends. And I'm still friends with them now. They're lovely people. We all had similar childhoods, and we all understood what they were going through. After I became involved in the YPF, I still am a Great Ormond Street ambassador. So I was doing talks for huge sort of events like Barclays, Lloyds CSB, Sainsbury's, where they kind of picked Great Ormond Street as the charity of the year. That's how I started involved myself in public speaking. One of the first ones I did was for 1,300 people, so it was quite an overwhelming experience, but I just absolutely loved doing it, and it was a great opportunity to sort of say where the funds go, but also to tell my story about what I do at Great Ormond Street and what I did growing up. The volunteer, I know everyone says it's a cliche, but actually volunteering has really improved everything. It's given me life skills to start working again, the public speaking skills that I didn't really know that I might have had, the friendship. It's honestly the mental health blip as well. Let's talk about this because men don't talk about mental health enough. I think that acknowledging that breakdown was probably the best thing that I did because I put it off for a long time and didn't acknowledge it. doing the volunteering at Great Ormond Street has led to so many other opportunities. I now work in rare disease with Rebecca for the magazine. I've done lots of things with Beacon and Medics for Rare Diseases and Cambridge Rare Disease Network. All these opportunities came because I started volunteering for Great Ormond Street, so it's kind of a weird way how it's all evolved. You know, everyone knows about, or not everyone, but lots of people know about Great Ormond Street. Obviously, it's really famous, but generally, like it's such an important place to me. And you know, my mum and dad have put probably quite a large chunk of my inheritance in their will to them. So a bit of a love-hate, but still, I appreciate it. You know, I am very lucky to be here. I didn't really think I would be in some ways. I think I didn't really plan to be here. So I think it's something that people now talk about in rare disease is kind of life planning when you have a life-limiting illness, because you don't think about wills, you don't think about life insurance, all this kind of stuff. So actually, like, it's weird when you're getting to the age where you're expected to live to, what are you supposed to do? So I don't know. But the volunteering has given me a different perspective on life, and maybe, you know, has helped me with my kind of happy-go-lucky attitude. And that's me.